All right, guys, welcome back into another NFL DFS video. My name is Eric Paulzine with 9 to 5 Sports. Going to be getting into the ownership leverage here for week 6. And as always, I want to remind you that I am saying ownership leverage. This is hopefully going to be actionable information for you guys, not just fluff talk on ownership. Okay, I'm hoping to give you guys some plays and some distinctions in those plays with ownership leverage. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure to give a like and subscribe. That helps out the channel a lot. All right, let's get into the ownership leverage plays. And I do just want to remind people, I am recording this on Saturday morning. This does change throughout the day and throughout Sunday, okay? So when you're coming in, the ownerships might be a little bit different. Typically speaking, though, the ownership, the players that are high owned are going to continue to be high owned, okay? It does change, though, okay? I just want to remind people about that. So looking at it right now, Josh Allen is going to be the highest owned player on the slate for quarterbacks, which makes a lot of sense. I think this number is going to go up a lot more. Currently only 11% owned, and I guess the only reason why he's not going to be maybe too high owned is because Kyler Murray is about $900 cheaper in an equally good as matchup. But I think just playing Josh Allen makes a lot of sense just because he's safe. You can afford the salary to pay out for him. So he does rank out as the top leverage play at only 11% projected ownership because he's been averaging over 30 DK points per game and he's scored over 25 DK points per game. It's tough to beat that consistency, and that's why he's kind of under-owned currently right now. I will say Geno Smith at 9% ownership, you don't have to play him. I like him a lot, especially in stacking purposes. You could possibly play him in cash if you want to, but I think you can definitely just play someone else in his price point range. So we'll go by it by salary like we always do. Like Tom Brady's a little bit under-owned, I guess. 7% is probably right, but compared to Geno at 9%, I'd rather play Tom Brady. Same thing with Kirk Cousins. I think I'd rather play Kirk Cousins at 6% than I would Geno Smith. And I kind of already mentioned this as well, guys. Like PJ Walker, not going to be that high owned on the slate, probably like 1 to 2%. I kind of like him a little bit better as price point because what he does at that price point is opens up a lot more on the slate. So not too much quarterback wise. Let's get into the running backs. Okay, so salary wise, I'm just going to go at it like that. So I actually thought Saquon Barkley would be higher owned than this. I think this is a great chance to gain some ownership leverage on him. And running back wise, let's see how he ranks out. He's the 4th best leverage rank play on the slate. And actually all the top plays, all the top running backs on the slate are pretty under owned. And that's because we're seeing a lot of people just dipping down into like the 7K price point range, taking the players that are probably just as safe with a little bit less upside that are cheaper. That's kind of the approach that people are going with. So I get it. But you could easily get away with Nick Chubb, Christian McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor. Okay, those guys are all about 7% projection ownership where they could go off for 20 DK points, and that wouldn't shock anyone. So Darrell Henderson, this is going to change. Okay, so Darrell Henderson Jr., only 2% projection ownership right now. I expect this to get up to 10%, maybe 15%. With Cam Akers out, he is going to be a workhorse running back. I know Malcolm Brown is probably going to be active for this game, but it's going to be Darrell Henderson who's going to be the workhorse running back, so I expect that one to change a little bit. If it doesn't, though, that is a huge leverage spot as the ownership leverage tool is telling us. Leonard Fournette, I don't think you have to play. He's not a must play. You could play Alvin Kamara over him. You could play Dalvin Cook over him at lower ownerships. Rhamondre Stevenson not ranking out well leverage rank wise, and I just want to let you guys know that is because, well, he hasn't been that consistent. Sure, the last 3 weeks he has, okay, but at this price point, at this ownership leverage, it doesn't like him just because that DK average isn't too high, and he did have a couple of duds early on in the season, I guess, in comparison. Okay, but I think he's an elite play. You should play him. He's one of those guys I'm going out of my way to play this week. From there, I worry about the matchup for Breece Hall. Devin Singletary, I don't think you have to play him this week, although I think he could be a solid GPP play. Kenneth Walker, this is the biggest one. Kenneth Walker, you don't have to play, guys. I'd much rather play Darrell Henderson, that's for sure. Kenneth Walker at 16% ownership is just like an easy fade, I think. Sure, the matchup with the Cardinals is fine, but even if this was Rashad Penny at 5.4, I'm not sure I'd exactly do that. He is a very touchdown-dependent play. That play that he scored on was a nice little cutback, but it's a cutback that most NFL running backs would make. I think a lot of people are seeing that big play and kind of getting excited about it. I would say there's a reason why Rashad Penny was starting over him. This is not like a lock and load. You're not seeing the price point and feeling great about it. Could he have a good week? He certainly could, but I'm just not betting on it. And then Eno Benjamin, like I would much rather play Eno Benjamin given the price point, given the better matchup. On the flip side of that matchup, I guess at 4.6, it's a much better play. He takes a lot less to hit value, and you can afford to pay up for some of the receiver studs on the slate. Like that's the route I would much rather go. Raheem Mostert getting a lot of hype at 5.7. I feel like people are regretting that they missed out on him, last week, and that's why they're pumping up his ownership. The time to play Raheem Mostert was last week, and now I feel like people are forcing it in there. Is he in a great matchup? He is, and can the workload be there? It can, but I could honestly see them realizing that he's getting banged up and realizing that he's never had this big of a workload throughout his career, and that's for a specific reason, because he can't stay healthy. Okay, so I could see that workload being capped at like 15 touches per game or opportunities per game. I like Raheem Mostert. Once again, it just feels like people are forcing in there. You can go a different route a lot easier than that. I do find it very strange that Tyler Lockett's currently the highest owned player on the slate for receivers. And you got Romeo Doubs, which I agree with. That's fine with. At 13%, he is a discounted price point play, playing a lot of snaps with Aaron Rodgers. Drake London. Drake London gets a tough matchup with the Niners, and honestly, he's looked good, but this is an easy stay away for me. I don't think you need to play him. At 5.4, there are better plays in that price point range that you can go with. Rondale Moore, you guys already know I like Rondale Moore a lot. Gets a pretty easy matchup, actually, especially where he's positioned. They gave up 39 points last week to the Saints from that position, and the Saints really don't have anyone healthy last week. It was Chris Olave and then Marquez Callaway and Traquan Smith. So, like, Rondale Moore should be able to go off and have a good game. I do find it surprising that Cooper Kupp's only 9% projected ownership, just how easy it is to pay down at running back and then be able to afford to pay up for a stud receiver like Cooper Kupp. But I get it. Like, people are just going with Stephon Diggs, in a better matchup. But also the distinction between Diggs and Justin Jefferson is kind of interesting as well, because Jefferson gets equally as good of a matchup and you get him at half the ownership. If that continues to stay the same, I think I'd rather go Justin Jefferson, get that half ownership leverage on him, and we can see he's ranking out as one of the top receiver leverage plays, maybe on the slate. Yeah, he's the top receiver leverage play on the slate. And you look at Tyreek Hill, second best leverage receiver play on the slate, only at 2% projection ownership, which is crazy for a guy that's averaging over 10 targets per game. Had 7 targets with Skylar Thompson last week. I don't think the offense is going to change at all. Does get an easy matchup with the Minnesota Vikings. That is a great opportunity to gain some leverage on the field, and honestly, he's someone you can play in cash as well. Mike Evans, this is extremely crazy to me. 5% projected ownership for a guy that probably should have been given a touchdown last week. Really cheap, and the ownership's low. I like that a lot. And then I will say that Chris Godwin with him as well. I like him as a solid play as well. Yeah, Chris Godwin's only projected 5% projected ownership. That is extremely low for those two. Okay, take advantage of that. I would say that Jacoby Myers is properly owned at 8% projected ownership, but I do feel like he's a very safe play, or at least he should be. And this is where, like, I'd much rather play Jacoby Myers at 8% than I would Drake London at 13% or Tyler Lockett at 16%. I feel like that's a great ownership leverage spot because, well, he has that consistency there. And that's really it for the receivers. Let's get into the tight ends real quickly. So tight end wise, all the players that you would think would be high owned are high owned. The tight ends are typically lower owned than they should be, given their consistency, especially on the top end. Like Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce always rank out well leverage wise because they're extremely consistent, and they're typically too cheap for their price point. So that makes sense. No real calls to action here, honestly. Like Daniel Bellinger, I think is fine. You can get him at 4%. Yeah, I'm fine with that. Dawson Knox could be a fine play. Actually, I don't mind Dawson Knox on the slate as well. Yeah, not too much to draw conclusions with the tight ends. All right, that's all I have for you guys for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a like and subscribe. That does help with the channel. Let's have a good week, guys. And as always, let's keep cashing.